All right. Well, we are about 2 minutes past the top of the hour, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I know we'll still have a few folks joining, but welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about Copilot, of course, but we'll be taking a look at it through the lens of actually using it for content creation and helping you build a little bit more of the speed at which you can turn over really polished documents, information, and things like that. My name is Larissa Cunningham, and I'm an Evolve 365 learning strategist with Planet Technologies. And we work with a ton of different organizations in various environments to help make the most of their Microsoft tools. So with Copilot in mind, I know it's a major change for a lot of people and the way that they're working. And so we've partnered with many different people to see how that fits into their organizations and the various roles that might participate with this kind of tool. So that being said, I will jump right in. We did put a poll here in the chat and just want to get an idea from you for how familiar you are with Copilot. This will just kind of help determine some of the talking points we go through today, but there's no wrong answer. We just want to kind of see how familiar you are. And if you have ideas, comments, or roadblocks, we really want to encourage you to put those questions in the chat. I will be monitoring that. And I do have some great people here from Planet as well to help answer questions as we go through our session today. So as you get a chance to respond to that poll, I see a number of you are somewhat familiar, not necessarily brand new. So that does help. I still want to cover a couple of foundational things just to make sure we're starting off on the same foot. So starting off with Copilot and looking at it within the experience of Microsoft's tools and whatnot, this is still a large language model. We've heard a lot of different ones put out there, and most of these help with different things like summarizing documents, creating content like we're going to talk about today, and just helping analyze or brainstorm together. The biggest thing that I do want to emphasize and just say is every organization is different, and it's really important to make sure you're only using AI tools that are approved, because due to the nature that the way some of these tools learn and grow the information they work with, sometimes working with non-approved resources can unintentionally expose confidential or proprietary data in a way that we didn't mean to. The good news is, with Copilot and signing in with your organization's credentials, you will already be able to protect your information and your conversations are going to be secure. So with that security in mind, we are focusing on an enterprise or commercial experience of Copilot today. If you know that you're in a different experience, feel free to let us know. We have other sessions as well that focus on those. But when we say on enterprise cloud, we're really talking about organizations where you're working in retail or healthcare, finance, really anything in that public sector. And Microsoft does a ton of security elements in there to make sure that your data is safe. And often it does need to be accessible in other countries if that's an organization you partner with. And so there are global data centers all around. These are very secure and your data stays in the approved area. So there's always encryption in transit and at rest. And really what this means for you is we can attach our cloud documents, we can talk about some of our internal projects, and it's never going to leave the security that we already experience with the Microsoft tools. Working with Copilot Chat, as many of you, it sounds like many of you are somewhat familiar or very familiar, and that's fantastic. That means you've probably already seen it's a very different workflow than what we may have been used to even a couple of years ago. What we used to do is go to our favorite search engine and try to condense a really big idea into 3 or 4 keywords and hope that we could get the most relevant results. And so I know many of us have developed a really great skill at honing that down, but Copilot actually wants the opposite of that. When we're chatting with Copilot, it's meant to mimic that conversation style experience we have with our colleagues. So we're looking to actually give more information, provide more of the story of what we're trying to do, and develop more context so that Copilot can tailor its responses and suggestions to your unique situations. So it's a very different style of engagement and often takes a little bit of practice to shift your mindset to. It's a learning curve, and that is perfectly fine. Now, what we'll be talking about today is how to create different types of content and work with Copilot as an assistant. So I'll start off with just talking about how Copilot can be a drafting partner for you. And it really comes into play in kind of every step of a workflow. You can start, if you don't know where to start, you can use Copilot as a brainstorming partner. And then as you are satisfied with where that brainstorming session went, you can move on to actually starting to create those rough drafts. And each step of the way, as we start to collaborate with our other colleagues and actually put together maybe a presentation or a more final polished result, we can then take those back to Copilot and get feedback, coaching, analysis to ensure that it's meeting the level of quality that we're hoping for. So you do want to stay in control of this whole experience, and Copilot lets you do that. It will give you suggestions. It's going to allow you the complete freedom to determine which pieces we want to use and if you want to tweak or change them. So to start off, in case anyone doesn't know, finding Copilot comes up in a number of different places. I'm going to be showcasing the basic Copilot chat experience today, which means you don't have to have an additional license to utilize the features we're going to showcase. So you can go to the home area for Microsoft at office.com and sign in with your organization's credentials. Or if you're using Edge, there's actually a Copilot quick feature in the top right-hand corner, and you can jump into Copilot there as well. There's a desktop app, mobile app, and different things of that nature, and it is actually integrated with Outlook as well. So again, all of this is with the basic experience in a commercial environment. And it really is just as easy as starting to chat with Copilot. There are going to be opportunities for us to attach internal documentation. So if you have something saved to the cloud or you want to upload it to the cloud so that Copilot can reach it and reference over it, you can give specific permission at different times to actually analyze that information. And then you can have Copilot help you reformat it or maybe reframe it just for a different audience. I know sometimes we're taking very similar topics and I need to talk to leadership and I need to talk to my team who is more technical. And then I also need to share it with people who are new to the topic. Those have the same core elements of information, but the language and the complexity at which we're sharing that is going to differ substantially. So not only can we create, we can also get additional information to help that creation process. And there's just a ton of opportunity all around. So I am going to go ahead and jump into a demo environment here. I will be taking on the persona of Adele. And I am starting here in Edge in the home area for Microsoft. So it does default me to this new chat area and it's greeting me friendly already. I can start typing, and we'll go over this navigation in a moment. The first thing I want to encourage you to do is make sure this is not your personal account. And to do that, you're going to look at your profile icon down here in the bottom left corner. And you can even see that it says Copilot Chat Basic, which again means I don't have an additional license. Now up here in the top right corner, with that login, I should see a green shield with a check mark. And that means I have enterprise data protection and Copilot will never learn from my conversations. It will never let my documents or details outside of the security I already have. So those are the two things I want to make sure we check before we start using any of our internal data. And then here, without going too far into the basics, we have our chat area. You can attach different content, so you can look through your work files or upload them from your device. And if you are still new or exploring some of the opportunities, there are a number of suggestions below that prompt text area. So if you're looking to look for rewrite inspiration or maybe ask questions, create different content, these will give you starter prompts to look through. And if these don't satisfy your need, there is a prompt gallery in this 3-dot menu. So it will pop up here. You can filter by the type of task or the job function. You can search through these prompts. And if you find any that you like, just look for that little bookmark icon and it will actually save that prompt into a separate area so that you don't always have to search and filter for it anytime you want to use it. If you determine you don't need it later on, you can always remove it from your saved area, but this is an easy way for you to come back to those frequent prompts, especially when you've taken a ton of time to write out all of the context and scenario around what you're doing on a consistent basis. Before I get too far into actually prompting here today, I want to show a couple other things here in the navigation. Up here at the top, you do have a new chat icon. Sometimes this looks different for people in other environments. So just know that if it says start new chat, what that's going to do is clear the slate from the previous conversation and context you were building on with Copilot and start a brand new topic. If you don't do that, sometimes it will start to merge topics you didn't mean to. There was one time I was translating something to another language, and when I tried to continue with a different topic, it continued in that other language. So starting a new chat just helps make sure we're starting from the same space. And one of the other things I want to show just as a personal favorite tip is in this 3-dot menu, there is a settings area that we can personalize with Copilot. And the area I want to highlight is this personalization tab here on the left. You can create custom instructions to help Copilot know a little bit more about your preferences, your tone, your style, and different things that you might always want to be taken into consideration anytime you work or prompt any conversation. So for example, if you might need to turn this on first, but then select edit instructions. You'll see a number of suggestions down here at the bottom. And then you can add as much or as little as you want. For today, I'm just going to say, help me with my critical thinking and ask questions to ensure I'm considering all angles. And it will help if you spell correctly, but it's not always required. Copilot is very intuitive at understanding the context of everything around it. So in my own personal experience with Copilot, my instructions are much longer and it gives me more tailored results even when I keep my prompts a little bit more vague because it already has that set of instructions that it's always following. All right, so we're going to start off today with a prompt we can all try, and I'll actually put it here in the chat. There is a portion for you to actually edit. So when I paste this here, you'll notice there's a section for the application in brackets. And I just want Copilot to tell me a fun fact about an application I might not always use. For fun here, we're going to go ahead and say Power Automate. And I'm going to ask for a number of things. I want to improve my collaboration experience, and I want to also understand the pros and cons of this tool to make sure that it's actually the right fit. So I'm asking for a couple of different things here. And really quickly, it already came back with a beginner-friendly overview of what Power Automate is. It's telling me a fun fact, and in this case, it can run quietly in the background inside of the tools that my team's already using. So I do encourage you all to try this prompt on your own. Pick any application that you want to. I'd love to know what the fun fact is, and maybe we'll all learn something new about a tool we might want to leverage. Coming down here, just to double check and make sure that it is following through with my expectations, gave me that fun fact, it described what it was and what the main benefits were, and I even have my pro and con table and the common struggles. So it followed pretty directly in order what I asked for. And you may notice as well, there are a number of references showing up throughout its response. Whether you attach a document or you allow it to search in the broader web, if it's pulling from a specific resource, it typically is automatically going to show you its citations and references. And this is one of the easiest ways to just double check the accuracy and if it's the proper source for the topic you're working in. So that can change. This will be a link I can click on. I can go review it and see a little bit more detail there. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom of the response, you should see a sources section here as well. This will bring up all of the citations that it pulled so you can go through all of them at once. All right. So we are going to start to take a look at what content creation can actually look like. There are a number of ways we can do this. And one of those is actually this Create tab that is relatively new here in the menu of the home area. So that Create tab is a section where you can, we'll go ahead and delete that for now. I'll show you some of those results in a moment. But you can actually create different types of data, an image, an infographic. If you select this more, it will also bring up some of the different templates as well. Not all of these are going to be linked to an AI feature, but when you're creating an image or infographic, you can actually prompt it, add content or references as well, and this will start to develop a picture or image for you to use and then edit if you would like to. So when we talk about content creation, it really is as easy as putting in your prompt for what you're looking for. You want to be really specific about what type of element you're creating. So if you're drafting an email, make sure to say that you're working on an email communication. But if you're putting together a report, we'll put that in there as well. And then once you get your feedback, you do always want to check your sources because you are responsible for anything you create with AI. So you want to make sure it reflects accurately on you and your knowledge. And you're still the expert in your field. Copilot cannot replace what you know with all of your experience. And don't be afraid to continue the conversation. There often are times we'll start to create something, and once we see the result, we realize there are a couple of things we actually want to add or adjust. So we make an iteration and send a second prompt and say, actually, this is great, tweak it to this. And that will help as you go through. You'll get more and more fine-tuned results. So we are going to start off with that idea of an email today. There are multiple ways we can do this. It's not just drafting an email, but whether you're trying to distill some information into a shorter email that's a new policy, or send an elevated email to stakeholders and so forth, Copilot can help you draft that, help you put it together, and brainstorm the sentiment around it. So you might already have drafts written out. That's totally fine. We can write our rough draft, however rough it is, and give it to Copilot for refinement, or just ask for feedback on it. Maybe we like what we wrote, but we just want to make sure it's coming through with the sentiment we intended. So we send it to Copilot and have it analyze the sentiment and how it's coming across. Maybe we just want to tweak the tone or message. And one of the other unique things you can do is make sure your subject lines are attracting the right kind of attention and urgency along with the email that it's moving along with. So let's do that together. I'm going to come back to my Adele experience, and I will just jump into my Outlook Online. You should also see Copilot here. So even without that license, when we're in Outlook, over in the far right corner, you should see this little Copilot icon. We also see it up here because I'm in Edge. So either one of these will populate that. But using this directly in Outlook is actually going to allow you to more easily reference the context with which you're working in. So I have a very rough email here where I might be personally frustrated with some holding back here, and we're behind on a project. Obviously, this is not how I want to communicate with my team, so I'm going to go ahead and open my Copilot experience, and we're going to just have it help rewrite this. But first, let's just have it kind of give me some feedback. So if we wanted to, sometimes it's easy to just copy and paste here. So I'm just going to say, give me feedback on the sentiment of this email. I think hopefully we can all see it's a little bit rough, but let's get that feedback together. So I'm just going to copy and paste this email, and it should give me some quick feedback. All right. So coming back, unsurprisingly, the sentiment currently is strongly negative and urgent, and it's saying this is a little bit more emotional than I might want to come across, and it's very kindly giving me feedback that we might want to adjust this approach for a better response. So I won't read through the entire thing with you today. Hopefully you can start to see kind of, let's go ahead and get that menu out of the way. It's telling me here's some strengths. You are being very, clear on the severity and the urgency, but it might come across as accusatory, which can have these other ripple effects. So let's ask it to help us change that. Now, I did mention that this is a contextual conversation, so I don't have to repeat the context or what my email said. I can just continue the conversation and build on what we've already started. You will likely notice there are a couple of suggestions here. These will help jumpstart a prompt if you aren't sure how to continue that conversation, but know you still want more. But for me, I'm just going to have it help me rewrite. All right. I like the suggestion I see here in the chat. Sometimes asking it to always give the fewest words possible can cut down on the fluff, and it will transfer to every conversation you're having. All right, so it's saying here's a rewritten version, and all I said here, I didn't read this out loud, but I want it to be more positive and curious, but still emphasize the urgency of the project. And so it's giving me a suggestion for my subject because I said this was an email, and it's pulling this together for me. So this might come across a little bit better to say, hey, I want to take a moment to realign. We are behind, let's get a better understanding of what's going on. But in my case, maybe I want to make sure that people are responding to this. So I like this rewrite. It's telling me why it works. Thank you, Copilot. Sometimes I need that, sometimes I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and skip here and say, okay, this is great. Please include a clear call to action so that everybody responds with input. So I liked the general sentiment we moved to, but I just want to add a couple of things to make sure everyone takes personal responsibility for getting back to me. Sometimes Copilot takes a little bit longer to respond than other times, but while it's still generating information, you will notice this little stop button in your prompt text box. While it's generating, you aren't going to be able to send a second prompt because it's still working on the last prompt. Once it's done, that stop button goes away and you can follow up and adjust as needed. So we're going to come in here. It's saying this is what it recommends for the body of the email, and it's even bolding for me that I want feedback from everyone here. So it actually changed quite a bit more about the email than I expected. And this is where you get to kind of pick and choose which pieces you want to keep. Maybe I preferred my first section over here and I want to copy and paste that into my message. And then I just come down and steal the call to action I was looking for. So you can mix and match, pull it together, but ultimately you want it to reflect you. So one of the tips that I will give you, especially when we're doing things like communication, is if you have examples of writing that you have or your tone and style, Those are really great references to add either to your prompt as an attachment, and it allows Copilot to kind of mimic you a little bit more rather than just aiming for its general, concise, professional, and more generic terms. So it gives you a little bit more customization there. All right, so that's one example. I can take that and put it in here. I'm going to go ahead and discard that because that wasn't a real scenario for me. And we can also try this with another topic. So I'm now leaving this here. Notice that here in Outlook, it is pulling in a reference for me based off of what I have selected here. So it's actually pulling in the email that I got and assuming I'm asking a question on that topic. So if that's incorrect, we can always go ahead and close that. But I'm going to start an entirely new conversation anyway. So in this case, once it starts a new conversation, so I don't mix those up, maybe I need to simply share some information about a new policy that's going out. So I'm going to ask Copilot to help me draft a short but professional email explaining this policy. Now, right now, I don't have anything attached, so we do want to look at adding content. When you select this plus icon, or another shortcut is going to be through this /, it's going to reference your recent documents you've been working in. So sometimes I might start typing in what I'm looking for, and it may not always pop up. So one of the things that you can do is look for this little cloud icon, and that should pull up your broader OneDrive experience where you can filter through by files or some of the shared areas that you collaborate in. So in this space, I'm going to go ahead and select this IT policies and ask it to draft a short email. Now, again, the more specific that you are, the better your result's going to come through. So if I have a particular format, style, breakdown, if I'm expecting a FAQ section and I don't say that in my prompt, I'm likely not going to get it. It's possible, but unlikely. So here we're going to go ahead and look through this. And because I attached that item, it should be pulled in and actually referencing specific things that are in that document. So in this case, it is, and it's pulling more detailed elements rather than assuming or making guesses or leaving me with a TBD section. So as we start to go through, or as you're trying to communicate to different audiences, this can be a really easy way to reference a project or other document and just tailor the tone based off of who's going to be receiving that information. All right. Now, again, for anyone who joined a little bit later, I just want to emphasize if you have questions as we go along today, please feel free to ask them. I will be monitoring the chat and have several people helping answer questions as well. All right, so the next big place that we're often creating content is drafting documents. Depending on what you're doing, again, you might be in various stages of the creation process, but we can ask Copilot to help us create a project status document with specific sections. And if you don't have a template you're working from, you can just specify, I want the overview, the progress date, any risks, upcoming milestones like I have here in this first example. Or you can attach a template and say, make sure you're following and including all of these areas. We might be looking to just adjust documentation. So in that case, I might attach a document and say, hey, give me an executive summary for this so that I ensure it has the appropriate summaries throughout and easy to read depending on who might be opening the document. Another really fun one is FAQs. Unless you have specific data from questions you're actually getting, I will say someone happily called this frequently anticipated questions. And often for many people, FAQs are a little bit easier to read than a full policy document of more official language. So this can be an additional asset that you might want to pull in with your more formal documentation. We can also use this for reports. So maybe you're looking to take an Excel document of a ton of data and write a full report for it, or maybe generate that report, have it help you improve your Excel document, write those formulas, pull key metrics, or anything like that. So we, in this instance, just have to provide the starting information, or Copilot's going to have to guess, and it may not be as accurate. You may be noticing a theme with me wanting accuracy from Copilot. All right, so we're going to come back here and I'm going to go to my main chat and we're going to start drafting some documents together. So I'm going to start with just an overview of this project, and I just want a one-page project status report on this document, and I'm giving those specific elements that I want included. So I can put that / in and look through my data here. Another simple thing you can do is if you have the document maybe open in the web, you can actually copy that URL, put that / in and paste the link. It should pull up the reference as well. So we're going to go ahead and select a couple of our Mark 8 topics here. We're going to stay on theme, and I don't see what I'm looking for. So I have a couple options. I can upload from my device, or I can look through my cloud files. So from here, I'm going to look for this proposal and just introducing this Mark 8 project. This may or may not be all of the details that we need. So, oops, I left that. That's okay. I attached the documents. You can see them up here, but this part wasn't super helpful for my prompt. I will say there have been times where I've forgotten to attach something, and in that instance, this stop sign can be very helpful because I don't want to waste my time waiting for that response. I just need to fix my prompt and come back. So if you ever need an oops, let me start over, that also allows you to restart. All right, so in this case, I referenced both of these. I can always click on them once you reference them in the chat. So if you need to review anything in detail, you can. And then we're seeing here, it's a project status report. It's giving me today's date and saying that we're on track. So that's a good sign. And then it's pulling through the details of those documents. So just to give you a quick idea of what those look like, I can click on that. I now have a split screen. I can still see all of the information over here, but I can reference the document itself. So as we scroll down, it's pulling from all of the details it found in these documents and trying to give me a detailed summary. So I then have a couple of options that I can do. I can come to the very end after I've reviewed it, made sure it was accurate. I might copy this and paste it into Word, or there's another option. We can actually select this little pencil icon to edit in Pages. What this does is it takes your entire response from Copilot and turns it into an editable page that you can keep private if you want. You can share it with your colleagues and have them come in and make adjustments, but it's a very flexible space to brainstorm, get feedback, and see people's updates. It's definitely not the only way to do that because you can co-author in Word and other areas. But the benefit of working here in Pages is you can do a couple of additional things that aren't necessarily available in some of those other applications. So for example, if I hit that /, I have a number of pre-formatted tables, checklists that I can use. And if I scroll all the way down, we have some templates where I can create a task list to make sure our team stays on track and know who's responsible for which element. You can do voting tables, calendars, and things like that. So this is flexible. These are very helpful tools that you can add, but if it's not something that you need, this isn't the only place, of course, that you can collaborate. So when you share this with other people, it is through this just share icon, and you can determine whether or not you're allowing edits. And if you see this option to copy a component, it's going to take a snippet of this whole page. You could paste it into a Teams chat, and then the people you shared it with can respond directly in that area and it will update on this page. So there's a little more flexibility with some of that collaboration as well. All right, so I will say once you get into this portion, you probably don't want the conversational elements, although every situation is different. So you can start deleting things, you can start moving different things around. So if I highlight this section, I can move the title down if I wanted to on this page as well. So if I wanted to go to a previous version, maybe we've been editing for a couple of days, you can go back to that. Control D and undo, those kinds of things still work. They're just not directly here in the ribbon at the top. As you start to edit this, if we're making the adjustments, fine tuning it, and I get to a point where I want to turn this into a more formal document, I can take this page and turn it into a document or a PDF. So up here in the top right, you should see create, and I'll see a drop down to turn it into a Word document. Now, in those scenarios, if you're using any of those more fun templated things like a task tracker, it will convert that into something friendly for Word. Just know that it's just changing the format to fit the application. So if we do that right now, it's going to pull from the title of the page, which usually comes from a portion of your initial prompt, and it's going to save to your general OneDrive. So if I open in Word, we'll notice here at the top, my title for this document is Create a One-Page Project. May not be helpful for you. So in both instances, whether it's the page itself or whether it's the document, you might want to come up here to the top and we'll just say Mark 8 Project Status Report. That should make it a little easier to find. Unfortunately, at this point, it won't change the title of my document here. So again, I'll want to come in and update that. So that should save there. And if we come over to our OneDrive here in My Files, let's go ahead and see if we can find that. So it's the Mark 8 project status. Let's see if that's down here. Sometimes it takes a moment, so let me refresh this page. All right, I have a number of new documents in here, but this is what we just created a few seconds ago. It's here in this general area. If you need to relocate it, feel free to adjust to the appropriate organization. But let's come back to this view of these pages. The nice thing is that we don't actually have to stop prompting with Copilot at this point. We can continue on. And maybe I want to make sure we have a really professional introduction. I don't have a change in context. I just might be working on my page while it's generating additional feedback. As you keep that conversation going, you can add those new elements from well, in this case, it's doing it for me automatically. So that is where version history can also come into play. It's highlighting everything that's new here and put it directly in here. That doesn't always happen for me, so something to look out for. If this is beneficial, which in my case it is, I can just go ahead and keep it here. I don't have to make any changes. If it does show up in your chat, though, you are going to see that pencil icon change to a plus icon, and instead I can now add it, the new element that Copilot gave me, directly into my page, and it usually ends up at the very end of your data. So you can move things around as you need to. Now, one of the elements, I will say it did change my title here, so I might need to change that back. It gave me a project status up here. I don't normally see that, but just keep an eye on how that's titled. And at any point, if we're done editing this, I've shared it where I need to, I can just close this out and go back to my full screen view. You'll notice that that plus icon changed to a pencil now because I no longer have a page directly open. So if you are ever adding information to something you've already created, this little down arrow will let you add to a recent page, and that will pull up anything you've created recently. You can also search through your pages as well. If you're looking for where those pages are stored, though, it is going to be in this left-hand menu. We have our library section, and it will section by pages and images. So in this case, it pulled up my status report, which it did keep the name. So that might have just been a glitch when it refreshed. and I can have a full screen view here. You can create those pages from scratch if you would like to. Sometimes we don't always start from that Copilot chat to get the page. If I want to start chatting, all I have to do is select that little chat bubble, and it's going to give me that split screen view again. The other place you can find these, I'll close this out one more time. You may have noticed when I showed you the settings earlier that this 3-dot menu does have recent pages at the very top as well. This is the same experience where you can see anything you've recently worked on or search through your existing pages. All right. So let's go ahead and keep going. Again, if anyone has questions, feel free to use the raise your hand feature or let me know. But I actually do see it looks like we have one. So it's taking a second for me to load that, but I do see the question. It says, when using the copy button in Copilot to copy an Excel formula and then go directly to paste it into the formula bar in Excel, it pastes it as text and doesn't create the actual formula. I have to first paste it into a different type of document, recopy, and paste it into the formula bar. Any ideas as to why? I have a couple of thoughts on this. I will say sometimes the paste is an interesting experience. One thing that may help you when I copy, let's just copy this whole thing here. When I copy, there are sometimes options to paste as plain text. That might help. Sometimes it's keeping formatting from a different area, and that could be a portion of it. Other times, I've also had similar experiences where a double click responds differently than if I'm just selecting the cell. So it might just have to do with the way things are getting selected in Excel, but happy to explore that a little bit more if we have some time towards the end. All right, so let's kind of shift over from Word documents. I will say you can also ask Copilot to draft an actual Word document from your conversations, and often it will provide you a download link that you can open and work with. My biggest recommendation is if you're doing that, be really clear about any formatting expectations. If things are to be bold or a different text color, make sure you list that in your prompt. But let's go ahead and talk about presentations now. So Copilot can either help you build that presentation or help you get the structure of what it looks like. I know sometimes we ask Copilot to create something and it's not quite what we wanted, and we really just wished we had the step-by-step instructions. So depending on what ends up being more beneficial for you, we'll explore both today. But if we're looking to generate images, Copilot's also a great support here. There have been a number of times I personally have gone to work on something and I know that I want some kind of visual to emphasize the words on the screen. But in that moment, I'm struggling to come up with what that visual is, what that icon is. And so you can ask Copilot for inspiration or ask Copilot to actually generate that image for you, and you'll have a completely unique image to add into your presentation. We can also use it here to recommend speaker notes and help make sure the structure makes sense for our audience, and even just, again, review and give feedback on what we've already created. So again, if you're trying to create infographics, you can do that in chat, or you can do it from that create feature we looked at earlier. Either place is an option. I will say sometimes you will want to edit that, and the create feature does take you to a landing spot where you can make tweaks or adjustments to your image and sometimes even adjust text and so forth. So two different ways to achieve similar feedback there. A lot of the time, it can also help us with some of the visuals that we're trying to do with reporting and make sure that it's all cohesive in that regard. So let me come back here and we're going to start another new chat. Actually, I bet we could keep going from the one that we had because I'm going to stay on that topic of our Mark 8 project here. So you may have noticed my chat history is here on the left-hand side. So if you ever want to jump back into something you've already started with Copilot, this helps get back right where you left off, and that will typically be there for at least 30 days, depending on your retention policy. So in this case, I'm going to say, okay, let's actually turn this into a create a PowerPoint presentation for executive leadership on the status of this project. Again, this is very vague. The more specific you are, the better your results, but we're keeping it simple today. Now, this might take just a little bit longer if it's actually going to develop a full presentation for me. Most of the time when it's generating images or actual documents, it needs a little bit longer to produce those results than if it was just giving you text feedback in the chat. So this might take a moment. If I'm curious as to the steps it's on, it will give me that insight. I am on our auto reasoning, so it is when it's thinking deeper, it usually reaches out and questions a little bit more of its response to make sure it's asking me any questions it needs to clarify what I'm looking for. This will typically take longer, and ideally that means you're getting better results. However, if that's not necessary for you, you can have it on that quick response and it will generate a little bit faster. And depending on how long this takes, I might jump into another previous chat just to give you an idea of what you can see. So it ran out of time in my mind. Let's go ahead and look at this one here. I think this was our previous chat. I have a couple in here, so let's see if I can find it. One other tip that I'll give you is if you know that you're going to be jumping into a previous chat, you can rename these. So in that 3-dot menu, this rename option allows you to make it something more easy for you to recognize and jump back into. All right, so in this case, we'll take a tangent over to Excel. I attached a document and I just wanted it to summarize what we learned so that I can help our mid-project review. So it looked over all of the data that was provided here in this performance chart. Again, if you want to see that, here is a quick glance at what that Excel document is going to look like. And then it's kind of walking me through all of that. If you need to zoom out when you're splitting screen, that's perfectly fine. And kind of telling me some different pieces here. It's also showing me it's actually referencing specific areas in this with these little reference and citation icons. So as I scroll down, maybe I need to actually turn this into a presentation. So let's close out this document. And I said, generate a presentation of this for leadership. And so we looked at that, all of the data in here. It reasoned for a little while, took a little bit of time to come back. And then it actually developed a templated PowerPoint. I can't find my words today. So in this case, I can then download this, take it, and edit as I need to, or I can keep looking through this, make changes, and when it does give you that element to download, it should look something like this. It will go to your downloads, and you can save it to your cloud location as needed. Again, one of the things to just keep in mind is if we don't give the information for expectations around formatting, templates, and details of design, it will just make its best guess. And sometimes that's really great, and sometimes that means it will need tweaks. Both are perfectly understandable. So as we come to the end of our time today, you notice that a lot of what we were working on revolved around prompts. When you're working with prompts, this is the core of your engagement with any AI tool, and the more specific and detailed you are, the more instruction and context you give, the better those results will be. So in this example here, we have a prompt that says, recap the findings of this article I've copied, include the top 3 concerns, and provide the answer in 2 to 3 paragraphs using a business tone. You can imagine how different that response is going to be over summarize this news about this company. It's going to pull what it can, but it's going to guess at the length of what you want, the level of detail that you're looking for, and it might be beneficial, but it might not be exactly what you're looking for. So my encouragement to you is practice, see what kind of feedback you get, and this will improve over time. Just to give you a fun example of how specific prompts can yield very different results, if we come back to this Create tab here, you are able to see a bunch of inspiration from this home area, but you are also going to see your images, for example, and I will have 2 images in here, vastly different. So I have 2 images. This one here was a very vague prompt. Our team likes to, or not likes to, but often has different circumstances where we pivot. And so we lovingly call our team roll with it. And all I said to Copilot was create a fun, let's see, I think I said, I'm trying to remember exactly so I can be specific for you. So I said, design a fun logo for team roll with it to excite our team. And that was it. That's all I said. This is what it came up with. Not quite what I was expecting. Kind of fun. But when I contrasted that with details about our organization, why we were named Team Roll with It, I gave some background context. I gave it a color palette to follow. This was what came back. I think I also mentioned make it photorealistic. So the style in which it responded with, the detail, and all of that is going to be dramatically different as you give more and more context. So just a kind of fun example for you to see how that can change for you. Again, I know I showed this earlier, but you can leverage that prompt gallery to get ideas. What we talked about today is only a small scope of what Copilot can help with. So if you're curious or looking for inspiration, I highly encourage you to scroll through that gallery and see if anything in there might help you, even just as a starting point, and then you can add a ton of additional detail to help get that going. So I do want to save some time here for any questions we might not have answered today. And I do just want to say we encourage, if you think that there's something that we can assist with your organization as you're looking into some of these AI tools, please let us know. I will go ahead and put some resources here in the chat as well. But what questions do you have, and what other pain points have you seen, if any, as you've been working with Copilot? All right. We have a quiet group today. I won't put anyone on the spot. That is perfectly fine. But if you have additional questions, we would love to help and support you. Please feel free to, again, put those in the chat. I will also stop the recording here in a moment if you'd like to stay on and ask any additional questions as well. But otherwise, thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. We will have additional sessions here in the future. So if you're looking for more training or support, let us know, and we likely have something to help you. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.